Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. And I am so excited today. I have one of my very, 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 very special humans on, Yanna Smith from Namibia. And well, before I go ahead, hello, beautiful. I have been trying for months to hook you into a show. Finally, I have you. How are you?
I'm very well, Chantal. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Ah, wonderful. Thank you. And really good to have you here because I want to just give an introduction to our viewers on what you're doing right now. And then I would love for you just to fill in who you are, where you come from, what got you onto this path, all those beautiful, interesting human things. And then from there, we're going to have a series. And in fact, Jana is going to be a regular on this channel because currently she's doing her PhD in natural sciences. And her thesis is combating human wildlife conflict in the southwestern perimeter of Etosha in Namibia. So it is incredibly interesting what you're doing. I know you've got an absolute heart for humanity, the animals, the people, everything. I've known you for many years, and we've spent many, many hours having conversations about this. So I am so grateful that finally we get to this point where we can have this conversation on a whole nother level. So over to you. Tell us about you.
Okay. So born and raised in Namibia. Always been an animal lover since I can remember. I've loved animals. Got into natural sciences really late in my life at around 25. Went back to university, and then of course I don't know, the typical, if we can get people out of the way, then we can save the lions. My work was mostly centered about lions, centered around lions and lion conservation. And then I finished my master's, and then I moved to a plot. And then we had sheep and we had Wilbur, and you know Wilbur, Chantal.
Well, tell us
And
about
that,
Wilbur. That's a very interesting story because I know a lot of the viewers who've been following us know about Henry. Henry's our
yes,
cow, our
yes.
ox that we rescued from the slaughterhouse. But before Henry, there was Wilbur. So why don't you tell us how this came about, which is actually the catalyst to you doing the PhD that you're doing right now. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we were, on the plot, and we love animals. So everything was centered around just, obviously, I mean, we slaughtered, we sold, but it was all done honorably with rituals and so on. But so Wilbur's mom, it was drought in 2016, at the end of 2016, early 2017. The rains came quite late that year, although they came well. But just before they came, a lot of the cattle owners left their animals on the road reserves to graze. And we drove 8 kilometers into Okahanya, which is just about 60 kilometers north of Windhoek. And we saw this cow with her calf, and 4 days later, the cow was down with her calf standing under the tree. And that's when we knew we needed to step in. So we stepped in, we had her go with the JCB, we called in help. And anyway, so she went to the plot. Jewel was her name. And then she died eventually, well, that night. And then we rescued Wilbur. And my son named him because he had just watched Charlotte's Web. And Wilbur, I think, was for me the greatest soul to ever enter my life. And I've raised lions, I've kissed lions, I've had many tamed lions in my life. I've had many wild lions that I've known well, semi-wild lions, human habituated lions. But Wilbur changed everything. And that's when I realized that coming from a background where if we could just remove all the livestock and save the lions, the livestock needed to be saved too. And I have been working on a PhD since 2011, but I couldn't find the right one until I eventually settled on, round about 2013, that the lion is an archetype. And then I started investigating Jung, and I went into collective unconscious and inherited memory. And I have a lot of rescue dogs, and my bitches who have not suffered a day of abuse in their life will still respond the way their moms do. And I have a genetics as my second subject in my BSc degree. So I got into epigenetics, and I got into the lion is an archetype, and then I got into anthropology, and then I got into my PhD, which is about traditional ecological knowledge or indigenous knowledge and ancient knowledge and the spiritual value of animals, and trying to use that to combat human-wildlife conflict with people in the equation.
I think what you're doing is amazing, because fundamentally it's not what we have been taught at all. You know, we on this planet live by a very, I call it the kill culture. You know, if people fear something and they don't understand it, they're going to kill it. And
Right.
we see this all the time, right? And it's not just that, but it's like and it's very real. When you're looking at farmers with their livestock and the predators that are taking out their livestock, for example, the farmer will see the solution that he shoots the predators. But that has been happening for so long, and it's clearly not the solution. So,
Absolutely not.
yeah,
So if, for example, let's go straight back to what everybody will understand. Snakes are terrible because of Eve. They are deadly because of Eve. Oh my God, kill the snake, kill the snake. Snakes are poisonous. I didn't know what this is. We see it all the time on our snake groups on Facebook. Is this thing poisonous? Sorry, I had to kill it. It's not poisonous. Why did you kill it? It's what we know. Snakes are evil. I mean, but then again, cattle, Chantal, are as important to Namibia's indigenous communities, South Africa's indigenous communities, Africa's indigenous communities, as they are to us as European First Nations. You know about the Yuroks. You know that there's a rune, urur, for the Yuroks. Cattle are seen in my country. I don't know so much about your cultures, but in my country, cattle are seen as a symbol of wealth. They are seen as a symbol of significance. So your cattle are important. But lions are also. Hyenas have got a bad rap. I don't know why hyenas got a bad rap. Hyenas are apparently scavengers. They're not scavengers. They kill 70% more, in fact, of what they eat than what lions do. But they've got this bad rap. I don't know who gave them this bad rap, but they have a bad rap. The thing is just, this is where the whole, and we're going back to Jung, this is where your collective unconscious comes in, where we actually know what we need to do, but so many things have happened in between with modern civilization that we've forgotten that we actually have the solutions already. Not all snakes are bad, but God, no, snake, oh, Eden and the apple, and it's evil and it's Satan. The Bible makes reference to the lion in two ways. Jesus is the Lion of Judah, and Satan walks around like a lion at night. So, it is, you know, communities that worked with lions, that lived with lions for centuries. Lions are sacred in my country too, in Ethiopia, in the Kava Highlands. They're doing exceptionally well because the lions are sacred. And there's no conflict. There never used to be conflict in Kenya, but all of a sudden there's conflict between the Maasai and the lions. There wasn't conflict. The Maasai had their cattle.
Why do you think? Because I'm hearing this more and more. And I want to just ask you this question, then I want to backtrack a little bit. But while we're on the topic, why do you think there is more conflict now in modern days between the Maasai and the lion than what there was in the past?
Politics, Chantal. This land belongs to the state because we need the tourism, because we need the forex, and it's politics. And the thing is, in my country too, the government is not, we had a whole human wildlife conflict workshop. The NGOs, foreign NGOs were there. Government was there. The farmers were there. The communities were not there. The traditional authorities, yes, the community leadership, the conservancy leadership, All of those people are there. But the actual people who live in their homesteads and are dealing with the wildlife were not there. We are
Mhm.
not, we are simply, what we've done, and what we've done in this country, in my view, we've taken fortress conservation where we fence areas off and keep them pristine. What we've done is we've plonked communities in there and said, the wildlife is yours, you can use it, but we centrally, as government, we will control how you use the resources. And we don't
Yeah,
care about what you think or how you have to manage or survive, whether it's rain or flood. We just, but we know better. It's this know better thing. The communities on the ground, whether they can read or write, is irrelevant. They know better. You know, in the
yeah.
old days, they had herding songs, so they would sing to their cattle while they herded them. The cattle herders, I wanted to call them shepherds. No, they're not exactly shepherds. We're talking about cattle. So, and they would sing these songs, and the cattle would respond. And in that way, and I still have to do more research on this, in that way, they knew where the predators were because they could see the level of stress in their animals and the response in their animals. Cattle
Wow.
herding and the singing is all but gone. It's all but gone. And I'm not, I mean, I am a European by descent, but I still feel that our communities, our indigenous communities, they know what they need to do, but there's been a monetization of conservation, which has prevented them from applying what they know to apply. All of this is assumption. I'm yet to discover this and prove it, but fingers crossed, I think I'm gonna.
And I think that that's what I look forward to us going into later about your PhD, because I know you go into a lot more detail around that. And it's so true. Everything has been politicized. The government controls everything, and it's not for the people's good. We know that by now. What I'd like to see is that I think it's fruitless fighting them, the government, in any country. But what I'd like to see is to turn that system upside down, and the only people who can do that are the people, and by that, when we give them back the knowledge, the skills, the space, because we understand that colonization has had a huge role to play in this, but that's also a story for another day. We're going to get there. And I think it's so important for us to be able to unpack all of this stuff as we go along. And as humans, understand what we as individuals can all do to create the necessary change. Because it's not okay that our indigenous communities get shoved to the corner of the planet somewhere or the country
Yes.
somewhere and are left to fend for themselves while everyone else reaps the rewards, or those in power reaps the rewards of what is really not theirs to reap. So I think there's that injustice that has to be addressed. There's that it's really about understanding these ancient values and principles and how to use them in the modern day world. Because we can't, we don't want to go back to having to light fire with sticks and stones, right? We've now developed, we've evolved far enough to be able to have a light or matches or something. So, but it's about understanding the principles, the values, the importance of that reconnection to the planet, to our creator, to each other. And then from that place, we can then start changing, create the necessary change. Yeah?
You know, Chantal, these things happened in these tiny little increments, and I don't even think that our indigenous communities realized what was happening to them. So, you know, in an arid environment such as the southwestern Etosha landscape, they used the communities that lived there. And remember, by this time, they were already they already had access, or they had access to the Etosha National Park. It was reduced later on in size, but so they got a little bit more land, well, outside of the national park. But in the olden days, so they had the access to this park, but it's still dry. I mean, the Western Etosha inside the national park is still dry. So they had this nomadic lifestyle, and the Germans and the South Africans considered it primitive, and they considered it unproductive and not commercially viable. When actually what these people were doing is they were moving because it's arid, as the resources waned here, before they overgrazed, they were moving to the next spot and to the next spot and to the next spot. And of course, both the German and the South African colonial governments looked down on hunter-gathering because it was primitive. You know, they didn't even consider the Haikom people because they couldn't possibly be Bushmen because they're not short and they're not light-skinned and they don't have big bums. So there must be some sort of crossbreed between the Jutkwasi in the dunes on the east of Namibia and of course the Damara on the west of Namibia. So they just sort of let them stay in the park until they decided they weren't going to stay in the park anymore. And the Haikom have sacred sites in that park. Their entire legacy, their history, their ancestors, their truth of their existence is in that park. It's rooted in that area. And they have no voice. So what they got is a couple of resettlement farms on sort of the southwestern perimeter of the park, and now they're supposed to farm. They never farmed.
Wow.
So again, now they're primitive. You see, now they're primitive. And of course, the settler farmers do far better because, you know, they can do cattle production and poison the lions and the hyenas and whatever. And if they can't poison them, then they'll just shoot them for money because there's lots of Europeans and foreigners and even low South Africans, whatever, who will come in to take a lion trophy. And this whole sustainable, I mean, anybody listening to this now or watching this now, everybody will agree Native Americans had balance in nature, right? They knew it, they had the answers, and terrible things were done to them. Why not the Damara, the Ovaherero, and I separate them from the Himba, even though the Himba are part of the Ovaherero, and the Haikom? Why not them? Why are they not the first people of my country to know how we get along with wildlife? Because the Native Americans made that mainstream. They made it mainstream. And at the moment, the only voices that are being heard internationally here are the Jutkwasi, which are our sort of traditional, our known San, our known Khoisan people, the olden day Bushmen, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
These people are also first people. And if you go...
Yes. I just want to... So you saying... This group of people, this tribe is called the Haikom.
The Haikom, yes.
How do I spell that?
H-A-I, and then it's got two straight lines down, and then O-M. There must be a click in there somewhere, like the Jutkwasi, but I haven't heard it yet because I haven't spoken to their headman yet. I must still go into the field and meet them. They actually brought a challenge in our High Court to reclaim Etosha, and it failed in the Supreme Court.
Okay, so there's a tribe called the Haikom, excuse me, that is a direct, or are you saying they're direct descendants of the Khoisan or the Bushmen?
No, they were their own people.
They're their own people.
They are their own people. They are a true First Nation, like the Jutkwasi and the Damara. They are a true First Nation of Namibia. They didn't come in at any time. We have no record of them, the Jutkwasi or the Damara, arriving in Namibia. We have of the Nama, we have of the Ovaherero, and we have of the Avambu. But we don't have any record of the Haikom, the Jutkwasi, or the Damara arriving in Namibia.
Wow.
At all. So
Jana, this is amazing. Now, I want to know how you got onto them. What alerted you to research the Haikom people then?
Journalism.
Well, now we
There
know.
we go.
Okay. I love it. And we're going to get into your father now because your father is a very, well, he was, rest in peace, Uncle Smitty. Obviously, one of Namibia's icons when it comes to journalism stuff. And I really want to talk about him because he was such an interesting character. And I can so see that apple does not fall far from the tree with you. All I can say is your daddy would be proud of what you're doing now. I'm telling you that now. So before we get on to him, though, I want to know, yeah, so talk to me about, I've never heard of them, Yana. I've never heard of the Haikom, and I'm
Oh,
embarrassed
wow.
to say so. So I want to know about them and give us some information on them, please.
But you see, this is part of their marginalization. It's part of their, and they had some issues with their traditional authority to mobilize properly and to try and get First Nations status above the Jutwa or alongside the Jutwasi. Let me not say above. And they tried, but there's issues, as I say, in their traditional authority, and a lot of things fell apart. And their elders are dying off at a really, really, really fast speed. So I've got to get to them soonest. But they lived in Etosha. They gave the Dorsland trackers hell. When those Buddha tried to come from the east of Namibia and they moved through the park to get to Damaraland to try and get into Angola, the Haikom gave them hell. And this was their space. But it was sort of southern Etosha because the Ondonga sort of had from Namatoni, I don't know how to explain it, sort of the northern third of Etosha with the swamps and the stuff. And the Haikom were in the southern part. And they are all but removed. The last group of Haikom were removed somewhere in 84, 86, they were removed. And that's when they began to mobilize because they had lost their ancestral lands. There are some of the water holes in deep southern Etosha that are closed to the public because they are sacred sites for the Haikom. So the ministry uses them for game counts and things like that. But they don't have access. They have, and the Ovaherero have no access to theirs from the northwestern side of Etosha. They can't get in there either.
So
So
the
there's
government has closed down these people's sacred land.
Yes, I mean, you can go in through the park, I suppose, through the gate and pay and then go, but you would need special permission to get to the closed sites, yes. It's Chantal, yeah. No, you could get there, but you would need to make special arrangements to get there.
But what I'm saying is for the actual Haikom people and the
Yes.
Herero people, they actually no longer have access to their sacred sites because the government has closed it off from them.
No, they don't. No, there's no free access at all. If they were to apply for a special permit to get in and to go and do a ceremony for ancestors or whatever, that would be allowed. But they would have to apply for special permission, yes, because Etosha
Who
is now
decided
closed.
this, Yana? When did this happen? Who decided? Was this Sam Nyoma?
No. This was just prior to, but it hasn't been changed. It was just prior to independence. It hasn't been changed by the current government.
So who changed it? Was it still the South African government that
Yes.
changed it?
Yes. That
Why?
was when the
What?
last.
What was it? What?
It was when the last Haikom were removed from the park. They were becoming a bit of a problem because they had their cattle and they were hunting. So, and then in '86, they eventually realized, okay, they must go. Because, before they were just considered some sort of subspecies, they must have been a crossbreed between the Jukwasi and the Damara on the other side to make this sort of middle, because it couldn't possibly be a bushman because it's tall and it's not light-skinned and it doesn't have the body build and all of these things. So then they were chucked out. And I mean, the Jan Sumas and them, we had serious high court and then up to the Supreme Court appeals, and they lost access to their land. And they got a couple of resettlement farms run about 2008, just outside the park perimeter, and they're supposed to survive. And there's another group on the eastern side of the park, and they are supposed to just survive now there. But Etosha was their land.
This is, I mean, it's the injustice around this is huge. I can
It was when
imagine.
I read this, Chantal, and my father was an anti-apartheid activist. He was a SWAPO member. I was schooled in the convent. in a time when it wasn't cool to be schooled in English or with black kids. But this was truly, as I read these anthropological studies, the first time that I am embarrassed to be white in this country. And this needs to be rectified. I cannot.
But my question is, why did Nyoma not do away with that when he got into power? Why didn't SWAPO do away with that? Why did
I
they not give
think,
people back their access to their lands?
knowing what I know now, and with 32 years of hindsight, Nyoma had a lot of other things that had to be addressed. Black kids had to get into like standard streamlined schools and hospitals and blah, blah, blah. So he did his thing. Buhamba then sort of dropped the ball for 10 years. And then Geingob, when he started in 2015, it was more about investment and big spending. And 2016, we went into a recession. And of course, government still follows the advice of the foreign, I'm scared to call them powers, the foreign advisors on land and climate change and desertification. There are some theorists that believe that there is no desertification in Damaraland where I work. It's always been this way. But what's sad for me is that in 32 years of independence, well, maybe in 100, 150 years, farmers or pastoralists and nomadic communities have gone from saying lions are holy to quietly poisoning them and feeling nothing. And
Absolutely.
there is a political and a capitalist and an economic connection there, which I have to uncover before I can even remotely provide government with any kind of solution to human-wildlife conflict. We have to first
Well,
reignite our communities.
well, I think, when we just look at the Namibian elections that took place in, when was it, 89, 90,
Yes,
when they got the
89,
independence,
yes, yes.
they were completely controlled by the United Nations, right? And we know that the United Nations is completely CIA based. So we know that Namibia sold out. SWAPO sold
What
out. So
what we do Yeah, what we do know is that Phil Yanangolo has done in, oh God, Chantal, let me just think quickly. We're 2022 now. When was I? 2006-ish, 5-ish, 6-ish, 7-ish. Phil Yanangolo from the Namibian Human Rights Foundation wrote a series of articles where he alleged that Nyoma was a CIA informant and was actually flown out several times to specific sites and apparently evacuated before Kasinga by the South African Armed Forces. What we also know is that Clemens Kapu, a hero of mine, that man led the freedom for this country. He was the grandson of Osia Kotaku, and he was Ovaherero, and he was part of the old location removals at what is now Hochland Park. And they never made it to being recognized by the United Nations as the original freedom movement, the liberation movement of Namibia. I do not know what happened at that time. I was born in 73, and in 76, SWAPO, the United Nations recognized SWAPO as the official, and SWAPO started off as the Avambo People's Organization. So the Ovaherero were largely excluded from that freedom process and the whole resolution 435 and the Ondonga or the Avambu, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, they took over and SWAPO became the recognized liberation movement of Namibia, even though Kapoor and his counterparts had done light years of work to free this country diplomatically. But SWAPO then took up the armed struggle, and then that was that, and the rest, they say, is history.
Well, I think when we look at what's been sold in Namibia, and I have it on good authority that Sam Nyoma, and for the viewers who don't know, Sam Nyoma was the president of Namibia up until 2015. And he's the one that I believe definitely sold out. And he was very happy to completely destroy the Upopa Falls, right? Upopo, right? Upopo Falls.
Yeah,
Um,
Epupa, but it never happened. That development never
yes,
happened. It's still
yes.
safe, yes.
I know, but the reason I believe the development never happened is because then the backers pulled out because they were not prepared. The backers were not prepared to have him destroy the falls,
Let
actually,
me
and they were
give
foreign
you,
backers.
Chantal, I will give you a simple example, a timed, simple example that is just right now so relevant to what you're saying. Okay, so on Tuesday, for those of you who don't know, the south of Namibia is quite arid, very rocky. The Karasberg Mountains are of the youngest in the world. And a fire broke out on Tuesday. Understand? Wait, I must make sure that you can see. So if this is my face, our grasses in the Karasberg grow around the height of my face. Little tufts, very dry, tough people who live there. There's some cool insects there, but okay, we won't go there now. We'll stick with the farmers. And on Tuesday, a fire broke out. And the winds have been raging in Namibia. By Thursday, 260,000 hectares were destroyed. The farms there are quite large because your carrying capacity is very low. So there's about 15, 20,000 hectare farms. So we had 260,000 hectares destroyed. Everybody's mobilizing. Agra, Kaap Agri, Coca-Cola, Droogtehulp Namibia, Droogtehulp South Africa. Burger gave us 250,000. Everybody's mobilizing. People are falling over the stones. It's a very rocky area, so a lot of areas you can't get into. And so you got to fight from far or wait, or they're in the mountains, in the Karasberg Mountains, and you got to just wait for it to burn out. The footage, Chantal, of the sheep and the cattle that I have seen, you do not want even to go there, okay? Government said nothing. The NDF was not mobilized. The police were not mobilized. Nothing. This morning, our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations, Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa, who is currently in the race for Vice President of SWAPO, that Congress will take place on 24 November. She said that our hearts are with the farmers in the south. The fire was extinguished this morning at 4 a.m. Her post came far later than that. They didn't lift a finger, but we are told that agriculture will feed our nation, will lift us out of poverty, and everybody deserves a piece of land. And government did nothing. The president did not at any time from Tuesday until today make any statement on anything pertaining to the Karasberg fire. Nothing. People were injured. Chantal, I have seen sheep stumbling, burnt with 90% of their... I can't even. Nothing. Those people have nothing. In the meanwhile, private sector is arranging for fodder for those farmers who were able to get their animals out. We spoke to a farmer on Wednesday who said, I see the fire coming into my land. I can't get there. I don't know where my cattle are. I can't find them. Government didn't raise a finger. Our military is not involved in any war. They have nothing to do. They have the resources. Nothing. Private sector and volunteers and our farming community stopped that fire this morning. I'm assuming we're looking at about 320,000 hectares burnt. I don't know what the livestock losses are. I don't want to know what they are. This is where we are. So what would a couple of lions matter if livestock doesn't even? Or a couple of foul hyenas or disgusting poisonous evil snakes? What do we care? You know?
You know, it's just you're telling me the story, and my heart is just shattering.
I know, because I know you know. You know what I'm explaining. You can feel
Yeah,
it.
and you know, like not too long ago was the Australian fires, where the
Yes.
same thing happened. You know, and it's just yeah. Also, I mean, KZN our floods, and also
Yes.
we've had fires. You know, so
Yeah.
it's just one thing after the other. And you know, Yana, what is so apparent to me is that these people don't really give a rat's backside. So if we as the general public are just going to continue to let them do what they do, it's our own fault. So
Yes.
it is so important for us to create awareness, create knowledge, and to stand up and actually be the voices for change. So I am, again, as you're telling me these things, and you must know what's happening with the farmers in Europe, right?
Yes.
Because the whole objective of this NWO, the New World Order, is to destroy farms. You look at South Africa. How long have we been having land grabs here? And the most violent ways that our farmers are being murdered, children tortured, drowned in boiling water. This is what the level of violence that we're experiencing with our land grabs here. I mean, it's what's
Chantal,
happening. Yeah,
wait. Did you see the video of the table grape farmer in the Boland at Groblersdal and one
no,
in Klaver? So you've got all your vines. We actually had the video. We're following up on it now, news media. Anyway, so you've got all your vines, and then, the vine is most like a stocky, and then it makes that beautiful head, and then the grapes, and it's all gorgeous. Somebody just went and just sawed off under the head, under the whole big plume of what is your grapes. They just sawed off all the vines. There was one event in Klaver and one event in Groblersdal. It's terrorism. I mean, that is not even. How is that even a protest?
yeah.
And a protest against what? That's just terrorism. And if it's a farm worker on that farm, then he's going to lose his job now. So why would you saw off fields of vineyards where they come out and make their head and produce grapes? I don't understand this
But you see,
need to destroy.
this is the whole thing. It's like, there's two elements. We have the creative force and the destructive force. So, I say that when we work for a source, God, creator, whatever you choose to call it, we are creators. We work for the good of humanity because through nature, only nature creates. The minute you take nature out of the equation, you've got nothing. And when all of nature is dead, we cannot eat the dollar bill. And that's what we as good humans need to understand is we cannot allow our governments to sell us out anymore. We cannot allow our governments to destroy our first people and our First Nations because they are the ones that have the secrets to living in harmony with this planet, with wildlife, with each other. They hold those
But
secrets
Chantal,
within their DNA.
everybody, every single human being on this planet was once a First Nation.
Yeah.
There is
Absolutely.
nobody excluded from that. We might not be in the same place. You and I are not in the place where our ancestors, forebears, whatever, thousands of years ago were First Nations. But every single human being on this planet was at a point a First Nation. So
Yes.
when we discuss conservation, we must include people. Maybe not
Yeah.
governments, but people.
No, they could go. They could all go.
The governments
They could
can go.
go.
The governments can go.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
but people, because every single one of us, look at children. Chantal, you know with your son, I know with mine. They all grow up. They don't see color. They don't harm animals. Not one of them. They all play with friends, and every single one of them wants to be close to the puppy or the kitten. The only thing we have to do is to teach them to be gentle. So how does a 2-year-old who wants to hug the puppy and play with a little black friend, even though he's poor, it's irrelevant, he's a friend, how does he turn out to be an animal abusing racist when he's 18?
Yeah.
His parents. It's his
Exactly.
parents.
It's exactly that. And that's what we have to turn our head. That's what we have to flip upside down, Yana. It's that narrative, and really, I so look forward to what our future discussions are going to be on this because I'm also working with some of the First Nations people in Australia, as well as here in South Africa, some of the Cherokees. It's really just amazing And you guys, please watch the space. We're doing a lot at this point in time to bring that to the fore, because as I was saying now with to you, Yana, it's like understanding that when we tap into the ancient cultures, and as you say, we all of us are First Nation people, and we have been First Nation people at some point. It's in our cells, it's in our DNA. We cannot exclude ourselves out of that. So, when we choose to support that, we're going right back to our core. We're going right back to the deepest secrets of our DNA, of how to survive and thrive successfully on this planet by creating, not destroying anything that is that has a destructive nature. And look, things have to be destroyed, absolutely, in order to be rebuilt. So yes, everything has a life cycle and it's going to die and what have you. But my point here is if you're going to be part of the cycle that deliberately destroys and creates unnecessary pain and hardship and completely disconnected and have no compassion for other human beings, living beings, you need to think again. We really need to think again, because when we go back to our ancient roots, our core, that's where the secrets lie. And that's when we start tapping into that and bringing that to the fore in a modern world and
But
using it
Chantal,
in our modern world. We will
the
have the
coolest
keys
thing
to success.
The coolest thing is what you say is not even necessarily only spiritual. It is scientifically proven. Epigenetics is an inherited system of
Yeah.
genes.
Yes.
You have everything you need to know. You just have to have the guts to say to the powers that be, no, no. So,
Exactly.
no. Today,
Exactly.
it's no. Yes.
And that's
We
what
have
we all
it.
have to learn to say. Absolutely not. You know what I find astounding is that neither one of us, if you ask anyone if they trust their government and their prime ministers or their presidents or their financial ministers or minister of this, everyone will say no. Yet we bow down when they make us comply with the most draconian, disgusting, inhumane laws. Why do we do this? Why?
Because we
Why do we?
think they know better.
And they don't, and that's my point, because by now we should see they don't know better. If we allow them and sit back and allow them to squash the last bits of our sacred inheritance from our first people that are still actively practicing those cultures,
Yes.
we are killing ourselves. It's a suicide for ourselves. We are destroying. Our children won't have it. Our grandchildren won't have it. I'm here to create pathways for the future. I'm not going to be around to reap the benefits of this in 30 or 50 years,
Yes.
but it's for those that come after us. And that's what it is about for me. So I really think that the more we bring up stuff like this, and this is why I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing and getting the proof of this and putting it out there scientifically as well, because most people seem to think if science says it, then I believe it.
Yeah, then it's true. Yes. No, then it's true. Then it's true. Yes,
Yeah, then it's
absolutely.
definitely true. But now that we have said that, I want to know your dad, Smitty, that owned the Windhoek Observer. Now, I got to tell you, long before I even knew you and went to my dad at a farm in the then Southwest Africa. Okay, and we often went to Namibia, Southwest Africa, whatever, on holidays. The Windhoek Observer and Smitty was a household name in my house between my parents and whatever was going on there long before I even met you. So when I went to Namibia to work there, the first time, I think it was 2002, right? I met you not long after that, and I couldn't actually believe.
2006.
Okay, yeah,
2006 was when, yes, yes.
we would have met then in 2006, right?
Yeah.
But I just love, and I just love that I've met his daughter. Your father has a huge legacy. He's got so many incredible stories and things. And as I said earlier, the apple does never fall far from the tree. So tell us about your dad. Tell us what he did and tell us how you relate to that as well.
Well, that's
What
not
got
at all
you?
order
Yeah.
at all, Chantal. That's just, I mean, that's just a small question. That's easy. God, where do you start? You grow up and you like all little girls look at their dads like they're like all like, oh my God, and but my father taught me very important things. I traveled with him from the age of 5. I remember I missed the first day of Sabi because my dad was going somewhere traveling. There's obviously long before social media, so you had to drive. And I wanted to go with. So I missed the first day of Sabi. With special permissions, I could go with my dad. And from there on out, every weekend, I would travel with him. So I learned a lot. You see as a child, I was in the convent, as I said. So, and all the black kids in the convent were well off. And so and we were actually the poorest out of the whole lot. And we were poor. We were damn poor. But anyway, anyway. So I didn't understand black poverty because when I went to my friend's house, they had like a double-story house and carpets and all kinds of. Yeah, anyway, so we got to. This is a defining moment for me when I was 9. Hakasep at Isakos, it's the informal settlement. And I got out of the car and I had a doll named after the domestic worker in Gone with the Wind. Her name was Prissy, and my granny had picked up her head as this doll's head on the beach. And do I have time here, Chantal, or must I cut it short? So can I carry on talking?
You go. You
Anyway,
go.
okay. And my granny, having been born in 1907, had suffered enough of the crises of the world. So she picked up this head, and I still actually have Prissy, and she sewed a little fabric body on, stuffed it and stuffed, and made a little pink little dress. I loved my doll. It was the only new doll I had when I was 9. And Prissy went with me. And when we stopped at Hakasep, the smell was, and I said to my father, what is this? And he said to me, they don't have toilets. And I said, why don't they have toilets? And I said, because the South African government doesn't think they're worthy of toilets. And I said, why is that? He goes, because they're black. And I said to him, what? And he said, this is apartheid. And I said, but it's wrong. He goes, and this is why we fight. And for me, it was a watershed moment in my life. And of course, my father was just all the more godlike after that. Getting older, my father and I, from the time that I was 12, it got complicated. My father was is a weakling when it came to pretty girls. And so stuff got tricky. He had an illegitimate son, which for me was just because he taught me all those values of truth and honesty. But even though he applied those in his work, and some would say he's a muckraker, and I agree he was a muckraker, but he never lied, not once in a report, but he lied to us. So that was hard, and it was tight up until he died. And I think it's easier when a really well-known person and his daughter dies, because then you can begin the path of forgiveness. And I know his contribution that he made, and I love him dearly, but I can see him honestly. And he was great and brave and poverty-stricken. He left home when he was 16. He slept in the stormwater pipes behind Vernhill. He got his first pair of shoes that year from Mr. Dempert, because his father was a bywoner in those years. For those who don't know, the Great Depression, the white folk also worked on farms, and they were called bywoners. Not that white folk can't work on farms like black folk can work on farms, but it's a different time now. But yeah, he was a complex figure and very entertaining, very, very entertaining. And now, so many years, 14 years, he was dead for 14 years this year in August. He died. I can really begin to smile about his eccentricities, and well, it's been a couple of years that I could smile about his eccentricities and say, oh damn, what would he have said if he was here now? Or what would he have done? Or, oh my God, thank God he wasn't here.
I often wonder how he would have dealt with this spiky flu. I'm not going to say the COVID word
Oh
on here.
yeah.
We get struck. I've had my channel struck. I've had my video struck for medical misinformation whenever we talk about these
I
things.
don't,
Anyway.
Chantal, I don't know. He was very anti-establishment, but damn, was that man scared of an infection. So I don't know how he would have, because he would panic. Like if there was like a thing that wouldn't go away, he would say, "Ek moet werk, ek kan nie met hierdie ding." You know, so I don't know what he would have. I really actually cannot gauge, but I know he would have nailed government for the lockdowns. Even
Yeah.
though he would have been free to travel. I mean, I was free to travel and work, but he would have the economy and stuff. No, he would have gone ape
Yeah,
shit.
I do
Excuse my
believe that.
language. Yeah.
Because he was a really, really, he was an incredible journalist. He's just to let our viewers know, he had the reputation of never leaving a stone unturned. So he would go to the depths of wherever he needed to get that story, to get the
Yes.
truth, to make
He would
things.
follow up. Those years you'd get a call. There's papers under a stone at the road lay-by 20 kilometers south of Ochivarongo. You have 2 hours. He'd get in his car and go because you don't know whether it's a prank or not. That day there were documents. So he had this way, and people trusted him, and he never gave up his source. I mean, he went to jail because he didn't give up his source. And my mom says he should have gone back again because that week was the best ads she ever had in the paper. We made so much money. But then after a week, he got out on bail. So, and then we won on appeal. He was very upset that she had said that. I can't even terug to me, even though he got 3 hotel meals every day because everybody was just pouring shit at Swakopmund jail. Oh, man, I tell you. And the
He
letters.
was like he was like the national hero, right?
Yeah, right. Totally. So, but yeah, he was, and he was interesting, you know, but he was very complicated. And I think he was quite embarrassed about his roots. And I think he wanted to be better. And I think
Well, he
he
certainly will.
maybe,
He certainly made a difference with what he did. That's for sure. And
you
that's why I
know,
say when I look at you, I so see that apple doesn't fall far from the tree because it's like you have got the same grit and the same tenacity as what he had. And yes, obviously you're doing it in the way that you need to do it and the way that
yeah,
works for you. But it's beautiful to know that, the way I see it and what you're doing right now, His Spirit works with you as well, just to continue the things that ultimately, are important for Him as well, which is liberation and freedom. Really, that's what
that
He stood
was,
for,
yeah.
liberation and freedom.
He always said his people Namibia needs to be free. But for me, I think the most outstanding thing, besides his fairness and his freedom fight for this country, I think for me, my father's weakness was animals, far more than skirted women. Animals was definitely. God, that man had a love for animals, which I can't even compare. And it's the
Yeah.
only time I ever saw him cry was with animals. He never cried for people. He cried for animals. He didn't even cry for his own mother, but he cried for the animals.
Wow. And that's another trait you've inherited. I mean, I don't say you don't cry. I know you do. But
I cry for me
and for me,
and
okay.
for you. Yes, yeah. No, I cry for humanity. No, but my father
Yeah.
was really, oh, word, he was just about the animals and all of them. All of them. He couldn't stand it. He was patron of the SPCA for a long, long time. So, but not that he ever actually dealt, because he couldn't deal at all with the abuse animals. I remember his famous fox terrier, Cerberus, and he was driving in his Skyline GTX, anyway, outside of Rehoboth, and he hit a 1986, and he hit a horse. And said he was lying in his lap, and the steering wheel had crumbled, obviously, as the horse had rolled over this dashboard or this bonnet and whatever, and had knocked Cerberus unconscious. But my father had all the glass, so he was bleeding profusely from the face. And he looked down at his unconscious, bloody dog. That man ran 3 kilometers carrying his dog back to Rehoboth, to the police station, not to phone my mother, but to phone the vet to save his dog.
Oh my word.
Oh,
Wow. How
said he was,
insane is that?
Cerberus was fine. He was a bit concussed, but all the blood on him was my father's face. So it was fine.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah for that. Or just to, and just for those of you who, because I sometimes tend to take for granted that we have international viewers as well. Yanna's father was, we call him Smitty, Smitty, and he owned the Windhoek Observer, which was the Namibian news publication that was kind of like king of everything, all the publications for many, many years. And he was an
It was a
amazing
weekly with
weekly,
the
yes.
titties on the back. Yes, with the titties on the back page. So the
And he
South
always,
African
and
government
you
hated
got to
us.
know, for many years in our country, pornography and anything nude was banned, banned, banned. And if ever there was a girl that was slightly nude, her nipples were covered with stars. Okay, they put stars on her nipples. So in Namibia or Southwest Africa, you guys lived with different rules to us, though.
No,
Although we,
no.
no,
The South
you
African forces raided us all the time, Chantel. My father would sometimes cut those smalls, those stars for the titties so small you could barely see them because we worked manually those years with the compositing. And then he would just say, we took the pages down and one star fell off. No, we were raided all the time by the safety and security police. Oh my, we were eventually banned. We had to go to the High Court in Pretoria to fight that banning because of the titties on the back page. Yeah,
So you see, if he was prepared to fight to have his titties on the back of his
the
publication,
titties, yes, the titties were the thing. It was
can you
terrible.
imagine?
We had parents phone us, or I would have like friends at school say, my dad would buy the Observer, then my mother must first tear the back page off and burn it before us children can read the newspaper. No, it was a terrible time with the titties, die agterblad. It was bad. Yeah, he eventually stopped it, I think late 90s, when it was just no more a rebellion kind of up against, the establishment thing. So, yeah, but he hated having to
Well,
abandon
you
it.
can see that you're his daughter, and I love it. And wow, just looking at the time, and we're almost done with our hour. And I really enjoyed this, and I love chatting about. As I said, because when for those who knew your dad and they know you, you will see that you are so continuing the things that I know he probably would have loved to have done himself as well. So I'm very grateful that we could chat today and just kind of get the gist of what you're doing and what we're going to be looking at in the future, because honestly, I think it is so important for us just to, our world cannot heal. We as a nation, as a species, we cannot heal unless we dig up this disgusting underbelly.
Yes,
Otherwise it's like putting a plaster on a septic wound. It's
yes.
not going to heal it. We have to take it out. We have to inspect. We have to look where we went wrong. We have to change the things that and create a space, a world, an environment where everyone thrives,
Isn't it interesting,
particularly
Chantal?
us. Hmm.
We have to go back, not forward.
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
to go back.
and relook.
We have
Yeah,
messed everything up so badly. We have to go
Hmm.
back and
Yeah,
build on what we knew. And yes, technology
exactly.
is fantastic. Technology is marvelous, and we can use it in human wildlife conflict. We can use it in conservation. But first, we have to go back
I
because
love
we
that.
had it. We had the answers. We had everything until wildlife became a monetary value.
It's exactly true. And no sentient being should ever be sold for money, or that is it should not be. You
Even though
cannot.
it is, we can't, and I'm not going to avoid that in my studies, but what I want to find is a way that that sentient being that lives there is not going to eat this sentient being that lives here simply
Yes,
because nobody did anything. I'm
yes,
not saying there won't
exactly.
be losses. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that we are not going to discriminately poison predators and
Yes,
just to save cattle or chase cattle in because to areas where we have predators because we can get compensation.
yes,
We have to go back to we are the land and the land is us.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like the Bushman people, they say that the land does not belong to us, we belong to the land.
Correct.
So
And
it
one
really is.
day, when I
Hmm.
have my interview with a Haikom chief, I will give you a heads up. You will have a week. Get your ass here. You come with me.
Deal. Deal.
Okay.
I think that'll be
Okay.
amazing. I would love
Yes.
that. Mwah. What an awesome note to end off on. Yana, thank you so, so much for joining me today. I look forward to having you back in future where we discuss more in detail what your thesis is about, what we need to know about, what we as individuals can do to, in our own way, even start to change things. I think change begins with consciousness. It begins with an understanding. It begins with the way we perceive things differently. And when we can start, maybe that penny drops just and opens up your awareness to something that you as an individual can do, that's already half the battle won. So,
Absolutely. But thank
thank you,
you.
I thank you, my beautiful friend. Yay. As I said, I've been stalking you for months now. Finally, I have you. And you tried to get out of this one today as well. And I'm very happy that you didn't. Okay? Mwah.
Busted. Thank you, Chantal. Thank you
Love
so
you,
much.
love you, love you. Okay,
Love
guys and
you.
girls. Thank you so much for watching us on Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. We're going to, as I said, be doing a whole lot more on this, the whole Indigenous rescue, the Indigenous getting together, going back to our roots, integrating these beautiful ways, not just with Yana and co, but with Bruce Shillingsworth, Rasul, Snyman, Andy Bond. These are all people that are direct descendants of the first tribes or the First Nations people that we're dealing with here, or working with here rather. So watch the space. Lots of exciting things happening regarding this. And until we meet again, God bless you all. Please like, share, subscribe. Just share, share, share. This is so important. Thanks, guys. Until next